Well, I'll just begin in a moment. And the show that you deserve will be on. Good, good. So, there we go. Okay. YT, LinkedIn. Join me now for the 24th experience. 23rd episode. 24th. Got it. Done. So I am live on LinkedIn. I am live on YouTube. What's your full-time job? Or this is how you pay your bills? No, sir. I have a startup. Look at my LinkedIn profile. I have startups. I do a lot of work outside. This is just for fun. This is just to actually set up a routine, because I've had a very bad routine for a very long time, where I used to wake up late and sleep in the morning. So this is basically to set myself up for a good routine, and I hope it leads to something, right? Good routines lead to a lot of good outcomes, I've been led to believe. So if you can hear me properly, I hope you can. Can you hear me properly, sir, on LinkedIn? Mr. Paramjeet Olan? I hope you can. If you can, please let me know. I'm also going live. I have also gone live on YouTube. So I'll just take a word. Yes, we can. Mr. Anshul Chechani says we can hear you perfectly well. Good, good. And I'm audible on LinkedIn as well. So we'll begin. So we will begin. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. All right. Hello everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we start our day. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, and before we go, we've got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition? The tradition of the simultaneous sip. The simultaneous sip. We're gonna sip something together. And you know what you need for the simultaneous sip, right? All you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup, a mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Poured with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having just water because the coffee wasn't ready. Anyway, so here we go. Beautiful. It's not the liquid I've come to realize. It's the feeling. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that we are in this together. It says that you are not alone. And that's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. Let us begin. Air India and Boeing may face unlimited liability if the UK courts, if the international courts, if the Montreal Convention finds them guilty of negligence. So viewers of Thinker's Frequency know that we've discussed how bad the airline business is generally. So when it comes to the airline business and the reading of it, Peter Thiel was right. Peter Thiel said Airlines are a terrible way of making money. Airlines are very important for everything that happens in the country or in the world. They are very, very crucial for the global economy. However, when it comes to making businesses, they just lose money, right? And that's such a controversial thing to say, because his thesis is that competition is for losers. Make businesses that don't have competition. That's Mr. Elon Musk. I'm sorry, that's Mr. Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel says that since airlines are such competitive businesses with such extreme regulatory overhang and such risks, they never end up making any money. Right? That's what Mr. Peter Thiel said. So what I did was, just to check his hypothesis, I went and read Indigo's annual reports. So I just read Indigo's annual reports, and I found out that even Indigo does not really make a lot of money. I mean, it does make a lot of money when it comes to airlines, but if you look at Indigo's, you know, let's say last 5 years, okay? So in the last 5 years, Indigo has uh, what was the revenue that Indigo did, you know, in the last 5 years? 2025 it did like 70. It's 73 crores, 70 crores, 55 crores, 25,000 crores, and 14,000 crores. Okay, that's what it did for the last 5 years. Then 35,000 crores. So look at just look at the profit and loss statement of Indigo. Okay, in the last 5 years. So in FY25 it did a profit of 7,200 crores. In FY24 it did a profit of over 8,000 crores. 2 years, 7.5, 7.2, 8.1. In FY23 it made a loss of 300 crores. In FY22, it made a loss of 6,000 crores. In FY21, it made a loss of 5,000 crores. In FY20, it made a loss of 2,300 crores. So, just Indigo, which is the most profitable airline that India has ever seen and probably will ever see, because it's the greatest airline ever, right? As far as India is concerned. So there's Southwest Airlines in US, and there's Indigo Airlines in India. Nobody comes close to these guys. So even Indigo, if you look at the past 6 years of their, you know, operations, you'll find out that minus 2,000 crores, minus 5,800 crores, minus 6,000 crores, minus 3,000 crores, minus 300 crores, plus 8,000 crores, plus 7,200 crores. So, and now if you look at Air India has never made money. Let's say because it wasn't a private operator, it was a public operator. And public operators have come up with their own riders, that the business is much more difficult, has been. But airline as a business, not really green. And this travesty, this tragedy proves it once again, as if we needed another proof. So, and since this particular crash in Ahmedabad, three of Boeing flights have, stopped due to technical glitches. So, I wrote a piece on Boeing where they had a whistleblower who told them that, you know, their safety concerns were being overridden just because of production. So they voluntarily, knowingly sacrificing on safety just because of production. And that whistleblower was found dead. He shot himself. How many of you believe that he actually shot himself? You know, while the case was going on, right? He shot himself. Anyway, so PE-backed tech deals are on the rise, which should not be any surprise because Indian tech product scene is growing at the moment. So if you know, Indian tech outsourcing, Indian software outsourcing is a huge market. It's a $280 billion market. However, Indian product business isn't really that green. Okay, it's a very small play at the moment. And what's the size of Indian product scene? Let me just tell you that. Let me just tell you the exact size of the Indian product game. So $15 billion in FY23.
So it's basically at 15 to 18 billion dollars right now, and it's projected to grow to 44 billion dollars by FY23. Now compare it with the IT services outsourcing business that we do. That's a $280 billion business. So India is not has not been historically a product generating company as far as software tech is considered, but that might change because there's a lot of action happening, right? Speaking of the Indian outsourcing business of $280 billion, $280 billion is at a very, very serious threat. Because, and viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know, I've been talking about this, that Indian IT might not have good days ahead. I am not bullish on it. It is facing a lot of global headwinds which are frankly beyond its control. And now it's just been 24 days, and I said this in one of the first few episodes. We are seeing that the top tier companies of the IT space are seeing a 1% decline. Mid tiers are catching up, right? And even so, whenever an industry fails, I read it in a book called Elephant Catchers by Subrata Bakshi, where he said that whenever an industry fails, think of it as a huge industry which is going down. Okay, when you're looking at a mandi, okay, when the big market falls down, the big suppliers at the end of the mandi, which are like the huge suppliers which who move a lot of merchandise, they feel the pinch when the market rusts, right? They feel it. But who doesn't feel the pinch? The small retailer, the puttery guy, right? Selling very little stuff. He doesn't feel the pinch. But when the industry falls, he's the last to feel the pinch because he's not operating at a scale which can feel the differences happening, of that level. So that's exactly what's happening right now. The mid-tier companies of the software outsourcing business are not feeling the pinch right now. Right now, they're seeing some growth, some action, new action. But the big companies, they are feeling the pinch, and they have started decline already. It's not just short growth or declining growth. It's just literal decline, which they are beginning to see. And viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that we talked about this a lot. So, that's interesting. At 1.5 lakh crores, advanced tax mop up grows just 4%. That leads to a lot of insinuations about decreasing economic activity, or let's say incomes, as far as the whole spiel is considered. But that's cyclical. A lot of this is cyclical, and I believe there's not much meat in the story. But speaking of meat, Congress MPs urged Justice Verma to quit before impeachment motion. So you remember the judge whose house had caught fire, and then they found out a lot of cash in his house, and then it led to a lot of inquiry, which led to the findings that this might just be very illegal money, bad money by the judge. So what happened against that judge was that he was just transferred to Allahabad High Court. From Delhi High Court, he was just transferred to Allahabad High Court. To which people said that this is bad. We are not a dustbin. We should be treated with respect. A corrupt judge should not be transferred to Allahabad High Court, said the lawyers, right? But then what happened was an inquiry began. A closed door Supreme Court inquiry for the judge began. In that inquiry, they found him guilty of some lapse, basically corruption. Okay, so the next step was him resigning, but the judge didn't resign. He said, "I'm not gonna resign because thick skin and all." So he didn't resign. So the only way you can remove the judge is basically an impeachment motion in the parliament. And in the history of this country, 5 impeachment motions have happened and no judge actually got out. Okay? So this time it's gonna be an impeachment motion. So the Congress MPs are saying that Justice Verma should quit before the impeachment motion because it's gonna be so I'll quote Mr. Manu Singhvi, Abhishek Singhvi, he said, Parliament will be spared the arduous process of debate, vote, political crossfire, and above all, institutional insult. If the Jeb stares down, given the overwhelming odds stacked against him, if he decides to say, the first ever likely constitutional dismission of a High Court judge may be historic but highly degrading to the vital organ of a state. Okay? From till here it was fine. Then he tried to be verbose, So he said, at the end of the day, the flame that burnt in the outhouse must not now burn the moral fabric of our republic. So he says the flame that burnt in the outhouse should not burn the moral fabric of our nation. What is this bullshit statement? How did this flame burn in the outhouse? Man, this is a Delhi High Court judge who was caught with cash in his house. When it was burning and when fire brigade came. It was very much in the house. This is not surprising, this verbose poetry, fake poetry coming from Abhishek Singhvi. Because this is the same guy who was caught having an explicit, he was basically caught having intercourse in the legal chamber. There was a video of it and it got viral. And people say that he has no shame about it. So I'm not surprised. I talked to a lawyer and I'm like, yeah, you work with this guy. Don't people talk about, isn't he embarrassed that his tape got out? And I was like, courtroom or something. I was like, no man, he's proud of it. He's like, did you like the performance? And I'm like, okay, sure. Anyway, so moving forward, this kind of stuff only happens in India, I hope. I don't know for sure, but I hope. That's just an India thing, where people with such a background can actually give poetic statements on the moral fabric of the nation. Anyway, Make My Trip is eyeing $3 billion to buy back shares from Trip.com, which was earlier C Trip or Chinese Trip or China Trip or something, if I'm not wrong. Right? I should be fact checked on this. By the way, speaking of fact check, I said something incorrect yesterday. So yesterday I mistakenly mentioned that India sold 3.5 lakh cars in the last quarter. Actually, they had sold 3.5 lakh cars in the last month. I just mistakenly said quarter instead of a month. It was just a speech error, but error regretted. Sorry about that. Anyway, so Make My Trip is eyeing a buyout of the Trip.com shares in its company. And why is it doing that? This is a very interesting story. This shows that a lot of rhetoric can also lead to some serious action. So, Pitti brothers from Ease My Trip, the founders of Ease My Trip, they're pretty nationalist in their stance. So they had said that Make My Trip's board members and Make My Trip shareholders have a serious Chinese connection, which should be investigated. That's what they said. So they said that it should not just escape people that this company has a serious Chinese link, right? And given everything that India is going through as far as China is considered, it has that particular statement or that rhetoric has led to Make My Trip buying out its Chinese shareholder. So Make My Trip is issuing like $1.5 to $2 billion in new shares, primary shares, and then it's raising some debt. So to raise $3 billion, Make My Trip is issuing primary shares worth $1.5 to $1.6 billion, 1.4 to 1.6, besides raising convertible notes of $1.25 billion with a green shoe option of $187 million. So they're basically raising debt and also raising new primary shares, and they're going to bring down the ownership of the C Trip guys, and then they'll bring in new independent directors to replace them, and so on and so forth. So that's huge, right? Who thought that a statement like that could actually make a company of Make My Trip's size move in that direction? I didn't think so. Speaking of Make My Trip size, Make My Trip has some interesting numbers. Interestingly, Make My Trip has never been a very, very profitable company. So I'll just give you a highlight. Make My Trip clocked record gross bookings of 10 billion in 2024-25, FY25, 10 billion. Okay, $9.8 billion of gross bookings. But it made a profit of 95 million. 95 million. So 10 billion and 95 million, right? So 1 billion would have been 10%, 100 million would have been 1%. So basically it's running at a 1% net margin. Make My Trip 1%. That's terrible. But that's gross booking value. That must not be revenues, right? Revenues must be how much? 20% of the booking amount? Oh no, it's a very thin margin play. So revenue must be. What would Make My Trip's revenue be? One second. Make My Trip revenue FY25. Okay, so 970 million. So it's basically 10%. Okay, so Make My Trip did a gross booking of $9.8 billion, and then its revenue was 978 million. That's almost 10%. So from revenues, 10% revenue, almost $1 billion in revenue, they made $100 million in net profit. That's 10%. That's good. That's not bad. But historically, Make My Trip has not been making money. If I read their statements years ago, so they didn't make money. Anyway, Razorpay has bought a stake in Pop, a company called Pop, which is its foray in the D2C market. $30 million. So apparently, Pop runs a UPI based payment come loyalty platform. There's something called Pop Coins, where there's an ease of transaction. I've never heard of the company. I've never used the company. I have been advising a few D2C players, but never came across Pop. But must be important. So $30 million. So Razorpay is directly entering in the D2C space, where it offers service to the D2C players. Anyway, Musk's AI is raising $4.3 billion in equity for XAI. Elon Musk, Mr. Musk is actually raising $4.3 billion. It has already raised a lot of money, $14 billion, raised, but that amount, most of it is actually spent because AI is a very expensive play. And so, you know what Mr. Musk has done? He has merged Twitter, that is X, into XAI. So Twitter is no longer Twitter. It's essentially a part of the XAI play. And with that merged entity, he has directly been challenging ChatGPT and the likes. Because now with Twitter, it has a real-time knowledge engine, right? A lot of conversations. Essentially, Twitter wants to be the window of the internet. And with that as the training ground, Grok does well. And has anybody used Grok? Grok is said to be very improvisational, very conversational, very nice. And it's also, as a model, quite informal as compared to, let's say, ChatGPT, which is a little professional, and Gemini, which is also informal, but nobody likes Gemini, right? Anyway, so that's interesting. Mr. Nilekani likely to head PAR reforms panel. So India's PAR sector is looking at decentralization and digitization. So PAR is already looking at a lot of decentralization and digitization. If you know the whole solar play that the Indian government introduced, it was all about improving the grids, their transmission, the power prediction, the consumption prediction, and so on and so forth. But now it's gonna go to another level with Mr. Nilekani, who I think should get the Nobel Peace Prize or something for creating something like Aadhaar. I don't think anybody has done more, like has caused such a serious impact as much as Aadhaar. Aadhaar is just revolutionary. It's extraordinary. It's been done very well, and it has immense potential. And the impact of Aadhaar will only compound with time. So I believe Mr. Nilekani is deserving of, uh, something like a Nobel Prize for Aadhaar. But he says for doing something like UPI and Aadhaar everything. But he says that this power thing is the next UPI. Energy is the next UPI. So after doing so much for UPI and Aadhaar, he's saying that energy can have its own UPI moment. So more power to Nilekani sir. He's just next level. Thankful to his, his presence essentially. That's so nice. Anyway, so ministries are meeting over rare earth supplies. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we've been talking about the rare earth mineral crisis that has been, you know, pushed over the world by China because uh, it wanted to show how strong it was as far as the whole uh, tariff situation is considered. So Donald Trump laid down the tariff, Team Trump laid down the tariff, and China brought up this rare earth situation, right? So now industries have and ministries have started meeting and started talking about how to diversify this rare earth mineral situation. Because for now, obviously, they'll beg, they'll plead, they'll ask for the new licenses, new approvals from the Chinese government, central and state. However, for the future, they want to actually move away or have some, uh, you know, alternatives and their own supply chains, which is also what European companies have recently said in an interview. So they've said that we are going down the chain right now. Earlier we used to look at tier one suppliers only. We're going to do tier two, tier three, tier four, and then we're also going to have our own people doing something, right? So how many of you think that this will actually translate into action unless seriously mandated by the government? How many of you think that these companies or these ministries or these industries would actually uh, develop their own situation for rare earth if China doesn't block it again, or if China doesn't block it at all? I think not a lot. You know why? Because these people, the industry folks, the salary men, they're already always looking for short-term solutions to problems. If if these people were not looking at short-term solutions and short-term growth and short-term incentives, we wouldn't have been in this situation. There wouldn't have been so much of offshoring of United States manufacturing to China. They would have just kept it for themselves, and also they would have spread, of course they would have spread, but they wouldn't have killed American manufacturing altogether. You know, they would have kept it for themselves, but they essentially sold their country out. Why? Because of short term thinking. So I don't think the short term thinking will allow them to actually make some serious moves if China just says, okay, now you've got your licenses, now there's going to be no problem. So let's just keep on it. It's unlikely, but I'm hopeful for India because, the thinking has changed recently. Moving forward, Nifty is looking at a ceiling at 25,000 because people are saying that the street is edgy. It seems that the geopolitical situations, the difficulties might not cool down, and they say that the RBI rate cut and the market thing, everything good has been priced in already, and bad things are yet to be priced in. So some shocks might just be railing it down. That's what these people say. So according to today, they say that the market wouldn't go up. However, I have a contrarian view on that. I think the market actually has a chance of going up because this conflict could end sooner than we think. Yes, if the conflict continues, it could be a big problem, not just for like in the short term, but also in the midterm. As we discussed, the Strait of Hormuz, if it gets blocked, 50% of India's LNG supply and 38% of its crude supply could get blocked, and that could be a serious problem for India and its markets, of course. However, the belief is that this conflict is probably looking at a quicker end than imagined before, because of whatever Team Trump and Israel have been able to accomplish. So yesterday, Mr. Trump wrote a tweet. He said, "We could kill him, Khamenei, but we won't justice yet, and we want unconditional surrender." So the question is, would Iran, talk about surrender? So Iran has mentioned that they'd like for de-escalation to happen. They'd like for ceasefire, but now the conversation has changed from Israel and American side. They say we don't want ceasefire. We want something better. We want you out. Essentially, we want. It's become a regime change operation. There cannot be any nuclear power. Iran cannot become a nuclear power, because as we talked in many episodes ago, we said that if Iran gets nuclear weapons, that's the end of it. Well, that's where the story goes home, right? So they realizing that with a sense of urgency, they've really gone ballistic on Iran, Israel, and now. So a very interesting fact is that in Hafia there is an Iranian nuclear facility which is very deep. It's like 1600 feet deep, and to blow that nuclear facility up, you need the B-2 bombers, which only US has. So Israel might not be able to take out the very deep nuclear facility on its own. So if it is not being able to do on its own, US can get involved in direct conflict with Iran. And Iran has asked for supplies from Russia, military supplies to counter everything. They have refused. So the conflict is Iran versus these people, right? And nobody else is stepping in. Everybody's so basically Iran is out of options now. Either Khamenei will die, or they will have to agree to a nuclear disarmament, or it just there'll be a regime change and there'll be problems that are beyond the scope of this conversation. However, whatever happens, you ought to think about it. What must the supreme leader of Iran be thinking? I mean, what was his thought essentially? Iran is no match militarily for Israel. What were they thinking? What's going to happen? Some divine power, some messianic power is going to save them from the attacks. But anyway, that conflict, I think, is looking at a quicker end. And if it looks at a quicker end, if it gets resolved, you might just look at a fillip in the market, which is not priced in. So maybe there is some scope for a temporary pop in the market if a good news comes anytime soon, which I believe is on the cards. So that's what I'd say. So, US stocks drift lower on crude, local concerns. Sure, that's okay. Central banks are rushing for gold. Viewers of Thinker's Frequency would remember how we talked about gold going up. When does gold go up? Regular viewers of Thinker's Frequency, you know about it? Just say it. Say it. Say it in your mind. Ah, you're right. I heard you. I heard you. Gold goes up when the geopolitical turmoil increases, right? Because it's a stability hedge against the world. So apparently people agree with that. And the central banks are rushing towards gold. With central banks rushing towards gold, dollar could look at a decline, right? If dollar looks at a decline, the rupee strengthens relatively, and if rupee strengthens, exports become good, but imports become difficult. No, sorry. Exports become good, but imports become difficult. So a strong rupee is bad for exports and good for imports. You realize this? How many of you understand this? A strong rupee is good for imports and bad for exports. Not many people understand this. You know how China essentially ruined the global manufacturing? How China came to be at the forefront of global manufacturing? By devaluing its currency. So it just kept devaluing its currency artificially, so that everybody else's exports were rendered uncompetitive price wise. Because when your currency goes low, you know, you export something, it's cheaper, essentially. And if you are an export dependent country, your currency is you are better off if your currency is lower. But if you're an import dependent country, your currency could be high. Imports become expensive and exports become cheaper globally. Congratulations, you were right. You're right. You're right, sir. Mr. Amrit Raj. Anyway, so moving forward, this is so good, right? We discuss it every morning. We discuss such heavy insights which most people don't even understand so regularly, and it's right before we start our day. So, such insights, and we have a deep discussion on these things. It's so nice. It's so nice. Earlier, I just used to do it alone, and I used to write articles. And while that was fun, this is much better. This is much better. This is nice. This is a lot of fun. Anyway, lending yields are set to shrink in FY26 as banks play it safe. Lending yields set to shrink. How many of you know it already? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know this way before, right? Because we've been talking about it. And we talked about it yesterday as well. That interest rates have come down. That is, RBI has reduced its interest rates, which means when people apply for loans, their interest rates will be low, right? When their interest rates go low, the banks will be under pressure, because how do banks earn? They lend at a higher rate and they make people deposit at a lower rate, right? So with interest rates going low, the lending rates go low. With the lending rates going low, the savings rate cannot go low. It's not as if they can just directly reduce the FD rate. If they do that, people would not invest money in FDs, right? Put money in FDs. And they're already doing that. People are not going towards FDs as much as they used to. They're going towards stocks and equities and index and so on and so forth, right? So the bank's net interest margin will shrink, as we talked about. And when that happens, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Well, there's going to be some stress in the banking stocks, I think. But don't report me to SEBI. I'm not a stock player. But yeah, you could look at that. The banks could have some tough moments ahead. But it's temporary. It's very temporary. It's very predictable. No big cascading effects of it. IT's Big Five lose more revenue share in March quarter. Some mid-tier companies gain. Well, I told you so. Share of top 5 IT exporters in the total sector revenue fell over by 1%, 100 basis points year on year to 81.3%. So the market share of the top 5 IT players has reduced 1%. Mid-tier companies are gaining. Bluestone is going at an IPO. Bluestone, do you know? This is a venture funded jewelry company. So they are at a revenue scale of roughly 1400 crores. And in 1400 crore revenue, they are looking at a 1.2, 1.4 billion valuation. 1 billion, 1.4 billion valuation, which is essentially 8,000 crores to 10,000, 12,000 crore valuation. So they're essentially looking at a multiple of 6 or 8, which is not bad. Which is great actually. But compared to Titan, it sounds expensive. Titan is at 5. So if they go at 5, it'll be a bad news. But still 6, new company, more room to grow. It's fair. I guess it's fair. I have not done as hard a research as I usually do on this particular game. Right? Speaking of research, speaking of that party, Indian electronic suppliers, Indian electronic manufacturers are looking at Chinese technological links. So, the government has given a very good scheme to ramp up the electronics manufacturing. And that scheme is a 23,000 crore electronics component manufacturing scheme. Okay? Just like they incentivize the mobile phones and the EV FAME Yojana. You heard about FAME? So it was basically a scheme for electric vehicle manufacturing, some incentive scheme by the government. Now the similar scheme is going for electronics manufacturing, but Indian companies are looking at Chinese partnerships to make those electronics manufacturing units go up. You know why? Why do you think they're going to Chinese? Write it out. Write it out in the comments, folks. Why do you think Indian electronics manufacturers are looking at Chinese partnerships? Huh? Are you thinking? Oh yes, I heard you. You were right. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency are right. It's because we don't have the necessary talent and training and expertise on this tech is considered. We are very new. We've never invested in this kind of a play, right? Manufacturing of electronics and homegrown stuff. This is very new for India. And since it's new for India, we don't have a lot of tech muscle, right? If you remember, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we discussed how Tata was essentially sending 200 people to Taiwan to get trained on the semiconductor play because they were starting this facility in Dhulera, right? So they are like sending 200 people now to get trained on this semiconductor play. And you can imagine, because this country didn't work on this, so skills are absent. But this is how skills are obtained. This is how training happens. This is a new shoot of entrepreneurial activity, because if enough people get trained, you're gonna have a lot of this actually happening. It always begins small. When we began the smartphone manufacturing in 2017, I guess it was mostly assembling. It was low end, but now it's a $20 billion export play, right? So it began small, but with the right training and so these companies are saying that we don't need Chinese capital, but we need their expertise. But that's a thorn up the government's, rear, because they don't want a lot of Chinese activity to be happening in India. So they want independence from the China. That's the entire play, and the companies are trying to navigate through this. So that's it. Let's move forward. Move forward. Torrent Pharma is keen to break into the big league. So Torrent Pharma is India's 7th largest pharma company. It wants to be India's 3rd largest pharma company. It was trying to acquire a very big company for $7 billion. Which one was it? Which one was it? Which company was Torrent Pharma? Does anybody know? Which company was it trying to acquire? Yeah, Cipla. So Torrent Pharma was trying to acquire Cipla, but the deal went due to valuation mismatch. But Indian Pharma is growing. It's already a $25 billion company. Has grown. The Indian Pharma has grown in $25 billion in May. So on a 12-month moving average. But most of viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that most of Indian Pharma is just a licensing play and manufacturing and distribution play. They don't really do any research. And we discussed it, that new drug development, 30% of it has come to China, while 48% of it is with US. US share has been declining as far as the new drug development is considered. China has been growing 30%. And India, I'm not sure where it is. Would anybody like to take a guess where India might just be? India share in new drug development market share. I don't expect it to be anywhere. Yeah, it's 4.5%. Global drug discovery outsourcing market, 4.5%. However, this could be fact checked, so please don't beat me up for it. That's the play. India doesn't spend a lot on research and development of drugs, which is a bit of a problem because 90% of Indians' API comes from China, active pharmaceutical ingredients. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know, right? We are heavily dependent on Chinese supplies as far as the drugs are considered, the core component of drugs, APIs. Now, if you think about it, China just flexed a muscle where it said, no rare earth minerals for you. And then every country and every company was like, oh no, oh my god, oh. What if similar muscles are flexed in the pharma play? It's gonna be a bit of a hassle. Right? Speaking of hassle, European truck makers stockpile to deal with Chinese rare earth crunch. I'd already told you about it, right? I already told you about it. So, uh, Indians' Europe holiday faces a visa traffic jam. Visa traffic jam for going to Europe. Italy issuing delays after delays. A lot of France is quick, but Germany, Italy, and some good players, there's a lot of delay. Did you know that Italy and Portugal people have been protesting on the streets against tourism? Did you know that people in Italy have led demonstrations saying that we don't want tourists? So they are like abusing tourists and saying that you've ruined our lives. There's so much of tourism that Italy has actually said, people in Italy are turning to streets and saying that stop tourism, stop tourism. That's the problem they're dealing with. They're so good. The countries are so beautiful. Portugal, Spain, Italy, and so on. That too many people want to go. And since too many people want to go, these people are angry because it's destroyed their lives. So I'd love to have this problem in India. Yeah, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you like to have the same problem in India? I'd love to. So sorry, Italy. I feel your pain, but not really. But not really. Anyway, moving forward, NH construction, National Highway construction may slow 7 to 10% in FY26, and most of it is due to the land acquisition troubles. Right, that's a very difficult play. Land acquisition is hard, man. But India has been making national highways at the speed of light. If you know, we haven't discussed this, so I'll tell you. Earlier in 2004 to 2010, uh, average road construction per day used to be at 3 to 5 kilometers. So 3 to 5 kilometers per day of road creation used to happen. Okay, from in the last 10 years, we've seen that creation go up to 12 kilometers per day. These numbers I read like years ago, a couple of years I think. So it's just phenomenal. We've more than doubled the road creation. In fact, in some cases, Mr. Gadkari said that we could even touch the 70 kilometer per day road mark. So I'll check. New road construction in India speed. Okay. Oh wow. So in 2019 to 2024, 31 kilometers per day. In a written response, Mr. Nitin Gadkari highlighted the average road construction pace of national highways increased significantly from 22 kilometers per day in 24 to 2019 to 31 kilometers. So I was wrong. I was selling it short. My God. Can you imagine from, and now I'll tell you the figure for 24 to 2014. 24 to 2014. Well, that is going to be a hard climb. In 2014 to 2015, the pace of NS construction was about 12 kilometer a day, which increased to 29 kilometer per day in 2021 to 2022. So that was where we were, 12 kilometers per day, and now it's 29 kilometers per day. My God. But now it's going to slow down in FY26 because of some legal hurdles as far as road acquisition is concerned. Construction national highways is expected to slow year on year due to delays in project awarding and execution challenging. So project awarding is a bit of a challenge. There has been a lot of problems as far as these vendors are considered who've made some bad roads for the national highways, and that has brought some bad name. So project awarding and execution challenges have slowed it down. While the project awarding by Ministry of Road Transport is expected to increase in FY26, it is likely to maintain below the historical high of 21 to 23. It remains stagnant, NH slowdown both in terms of project awarding, driven delays in appointment dates, land acquisition hurdles, increased project complexities, heightened competitive intensity, execution woes. Yeah, so that happens. That happens. You cannot keep growing at the speed of light forever, right? So, because just we were discussing, and Kerala highway collapsed, and then NHAI has debarred Megha Engineering because of that, because they made the stuff. So that these kinds of things happen. Speaking of things that happen, did you know that India's apparel manufacturing is getting a fillip because buyers are ditching China and Bangladesh? So you know about Bangladesh, right? It's a little shithole, and it has become even worse because of what has happened. The political coup. Miss Sheikh Hasina, Madam Sheikh Hasina, the ex-prime minister, she was removed violently. She had to escape. Indian helicopters literally picked her up, and she's now in India because of whatever happened. So Bangladesh was a pro-Indian power under Madam Sheikh Hasina, and she was giving teeth to US. So the US deep state under Joe Biden's regime actually led a coup, and they installed their puppet, that Muhammad Yunus guy, you know, uh, and it was a violent coup. A lot of people died, but some of that has led to Bangladeshi apparel manufacturing to go out of fashion, out of flavor, which has led to a good news for India, you know. So this is how things happen. Like Bangladesh burns, and a lot of problems happen in Bangladesh, political, and due to which some social unrest happens. Supply chains get disrupted. Those supply chains get replaced by India. So Indian apparel gains, and that's a very good news because Indian apparel could use some fillip. I checked, Arvind wasn't doing that well, but that's years ago. So exports surged by 17.3% in September and further 24% in October. Many buyers from developed nations are pushing Indian suppliers to expand capacities and get requisite certifications. As the country will get a duty differential advantage over China, China is facing the reciprocal tariff thing, and Bangladesh is facing, uh, you know, the socio-political ramifications. Anyway, moving forward, uh, slow demands drags US industrial output for the second time in 3 months. But that's not a big deal. That's cyclical mostly. Industrial production in the United States fell in May, second instance of decline in the last 3 months, as utility output declined and manufacturers struggled for traction against a backdrop of cooler demand. So that's why Trump has been pushing for a rate cut, because he wants a rate cut like India's. So Russia had a 1.5% or 1% rate cut. Euro is looking at a rate cut. India has done a rate cut, and Trump asked Powell, the Fed chief, to also give a rate cut so that the US economy can look at growth. But Powell said that we are going to look at it with a non-political analysis. That's what he said. So he said the Fed doesn't follow politics. Is that true though? Is that true? I don't know. But its term ends soon in May. So I think the next Fed chief who comes will lead to a rate cut. And if it leads to a rate cut, it could be a good news for the stock plate if all go well. China's new home demand to remain below the 2017 peak. So a lot of people don't know about the real estate troubles that China has. So China built a lot of real estate, at the speed of light, and that was sort of a bubble. And that bubble, the debt-laden real estate growth bubble, has essentially burst. And there are a lot of ghost cities in China. So they've made more houses than people. Can you imagine that those people were so quick with the whole thing that they said, let's make houses, let's make real estate. But then they made more houses, then there's oversupply of real estate, and then those real estate can't sell. And because real estate is often a very debt heavy and capital heavy exercise, that debt starts looming and it's bringing everything down. So Evergrande had a $4 billion default, $400 billion. It was one of the real estate players in China. But overall, Chinese economy hasn't been affected because they make so much money, right? They make so much money from their exports that it's hard to pin them down. But yes, Chinese real estate has caused some serious troubles as far as the economy is considered. And many say that their growth rate might just be a facade. They are actually not growing at 5%. A lot of it is just uh, government spending. But that's true for everybody, right? I guess that's true for everybody. Speaking what's true for everybody, Turkey is set to boost its missile production, which should be another nudge for India if it didn't need any more nudges to actually step up its defense budget, right? India's defense budget grew just at 11% year on year, counting inflation, that's nothing, right? Because half of that budget goes into maintenance and salaries and pensions and so on and so forth. So India didn't really grow its defense budget in FY25 this time in the budget which came out. But it does need to, because China's nuclear arsenal is growing unbelievable at an unbelievable pace. So they added like 100 nuclear warheads just last year. India has total 180. So you can imagine, right? So China is really stepping its pace up as far as this defense budget. Their defense budget is $250 billion. India's is at $80 billion. Turkey is boosting its missile production, which should lead to India also, because India just went to Cyprus, right, the neighboring country of Turkey, which Turkey has occupied some land of. So Turkey is an occupier of some land of Cyprus, and Modi ji went to Cyprus probably as an indication that Turkey's time to pay. We never know though. We don't know how these things pan out. However, what's true is that Indian defense could actually see a fillip and should see a fillip, because as I've always maintained, defense is a nation building play, right? When you set up defense facilities, when you set up defense manufacturing, it's something that cannot be outsourced, right? You cannot make Indian defense parts in China. So that leads to some high value, high precision, high intelligence stuff, which is great news for India, right? Because let's say if a few people are working in that factory, when they come out, they could start their own ventures. And there's such experts in manufacturing of such high value and complex materials, components, they could do well. And that could lead to great outcomes for the country. So with that, we will come to an end, ladies and gentlemen. It was so nice talking to you all. This is such a good thing. We wake up every day, we discuss these heavy things, heavy on the mind. Like people wake up and work out, which is great. We also wake up and work out mentally. So this is a mental workout. Like discussing such high impact things, and a lot of our things that we discussed have actually been ahead of the curve. So whatever we read, we discussed, we thought about it, we had dialogues, and then we were proven right in the days to follow, right? So that's awesome. That's awesome. And with that, insights and analysis that don't lead to paralysis have come to an end. Episode 24. Have a beautiful day at work. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.